Mary showed up with the terrible news on that first Easter morning. The body of Jesus was gone. As John ran to the tomb after hearing this, he was overcome with agony, with despondency. But as he peered into the empty tomb, for the first time in the entire Gospel of John, we read that he believed. Despair turned to hope, not because he understood the resurrection, he didn't fully understand what had happened yet, but because he believed in Jesus Christ. He placed his trust, his hope, his faith in Jesus. In that moment, hope became real and despair evaporated like the morning fog. The question for you and me is, what rules in your life? Is it hope or is it despair? Angel Granados Diaz was a Park Rose High School student. Despair ruled in his life, especially after a recent breakup with a girlfriend. He began to retreat from family and friends. Darkness, despondency, despair began to provide the filter through which he saw everything in his life. Soon, despair led to isolation, and then anger, and then violent thoughts, and then hopelessness, until he finally decided that his only solution was to take his own life. A few years before the first Easter morning, a few years before John went to this empty tomb, his story really begins. In the first chapter of John's Gospel, we're told that John the disciple was first a follower of John the Baptist, the first cousin of Jesus. And one day John the disciple was standing there, and Jesus walked by, and John the Baptist said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." John the Baptist may have even told his disciple John to go follow Jesus, to become a part of this man's ministry. John the Baptist said, "He must increase, I must decrease." He may have said, "Go follow him." But for whatever reason, John the disciple became a follower of Jesus. And do you know what we're told happened in his heart in that moment? Do you know what we're told happened in his soul when he decided to follow Jesus? We're not told that anything happened at all. You see, he decided to follow Jesus because he was curious. He was intrigued. But there's no indication that he was really changed. And can you blame John? How many of us do the same? We show up at church week after week, year after year, but are we really changed? Are our lives built with the bricks of fear and the mortar of despair, or are our lives now built on a foundation of hope that changes everything else in our lives? Are we changed? At the Last Supper, John again was present. And not only was he present, but we read he was sitting right next to Jesus. That Last Supper was a traditional Passover Seder, much like the Passover Seders that our Jewish brothers and sisters celebrate to this day. And the tradition at a Seder meal is that the host, that would be Jesus in this case, would take a piece of unleavened bread, of matzah bread, much like the bread we use for communion each week, and he would fracture it, he would break it in half. And then it would be placed in a white, fair linen, much like your grandmother's finest linens, and it would be carefully folded up. And then the host would go to hide this bread in some unknown place in the house. And when the meal had come to a close, the host would gather all the children and invite them to search for this hidden treasure. This looked like a normal, traditional Seder meal with family and friends gathered together. But just around the corner, a betrayal, an arrest would soon follow. In this time of coronavirus, how many of us can't stop thinking about what might be just around the corner? Are you afraid that someone you love will get sick, or are you afraid that you'll get sick? Are you afraid of your financial well-being? Or are you simply afraid of being alone in this terrifying time? John's world, it seemed, had come to an end as he stood at the foot of the cross just days later. He had left all his loved ones, all his possessions, his entire life to follow Jesus. And now, for 3 agonizing hours, he slowly watched Jesus Christ, the Son of God, die on the cross. There was no hope. Jesus seemed to even know that this was hopeless. He said to John, "This is your mother," and he said to Mary, "This is your son," almost a last will and testament of sorts. Despair, it seemed, had triumphed over all hope. For Angel, despair also seemed to triumph over hope. Why go on living? Angel wondered. He secretly bought a shotgun. He considered killing himself at home, but he didn't want his mother to go through the pain of having to find his body. For Angel, there was no hope, so he decided to take his own life, but he would do it at school where his mother didn't have to find him. That was the only solution he could see. On that first Easter morning, when Mary Magdalene showed up early to tell Peter and John they have taken the Lord, it was like a knife being twisted. As they ran to the tomb, Peter and John must have been thinking about these words. They have taken the Lord. His body is missing. This was a proclamation of anger, of fear, of hopelessness. Jesus was dead. And even 2,000 years ago, everyone knew dead people stay dead. This was despair heaped upon despair upon despair. Just last year, Angel must have felt like he was walking into his own tomb as he walked into Park Rose High School just before noon on May 17th. He walked into the Fine Arts building with this shotgun under his jacket. The gun was loaded with only one shell. That's all that Angel would need. And on it, he'd carefully written that morning, "Just for me." The purpose of this shell was clear. But for Angel, something amazing was about to happen. For John, something amazing happened also. When he peered into that empty tomb, what he saw in the corner was a white linen cloth, much like the finest linens that your grandmother has, neatly folded up and placed there. And I imagine that his mind went back to the countless Seder dinners he'd participated in. And at this moment, he may have remembered the invitation to the children that would always come at the end of the meal, "Go and search for the hidden treasure." And he may have even heard the words of Jesus echoing this, "Go and search for the greatest treasure, the priceless treasure. Come and find me. I am alive. You may not understand this yet, but I am alive." Do you remember what we're told changed in John's heart and John's soul when he first decided to follow Jesus? Nothing. Do you remember what we're told changed in John's heart and John's soul when he saw Jesus perform miracles and he heard Jesus preach? Nothing. Do you remember what we're told changed in John's heart and in John's soul when at the Last Supper Jesus washed his feet? Nothing. But at this empty tomb, as John peers in and then walks in, we're told he saw, and at that moment, he believed. He was changed heart and soul forever. He was transformed. Hope replaced all despair. On May 17th, Keenan Lowe, a faithful Christian and the football coach at Park Rose High School, was asked to check on a student, on Angel, who hadn't shown up for class. Moments after Keenan walked into this classroom, Angel walked in behind him. Angel pulled out this shotgun, he aimed it at himself, and he prepared to shoot. And Kenan lunged for the gun, he grabbed it out of Angel's hand, and he handed it to another teacher who'd walked in. And then something shocking happened. Instead of screaming at Angel, instead of shouting at Angel, Kenan comforted him. Kenan said, "People care about you. I care about you. It's going to be okay. You have a life worth living," he said to Angel. And then Kenan embraced Angel. He hugged this terrified, desperate young man, and hope overcame despair. That's the promise of this Easter morning, that no matter how badly we've messed up, no matter how broken the world is, no matter how hopeless things seem, God will take you in his arms and say, "I care about you. I love you. You have a life worth living." Today, Angel is pulling his life back together. He's rebuilding relationships. He's taking classes again, and he's talking to other students about how even when things seem most dark, most hopeless, most desperate, there is hope. What Easter morning has demonstrated is that life has overcome death, love has overcome brokenness, forgiveness has overcome sin, and hope has overcome despair. Easter means that no matter what you worry is most broken in your life, God has the power to transform it and bring about good from it. For John, it took him years to fully put his hope, to fully put his faith, to fully believe in Jesus. For Angel, his most profound despair was overcome by hope and by love. And for you and me, the question on this Easter morning is, when we peer into this empty tomb, will we also be overwhelmed by the despair of the world, or will we have hope when we hear the loving voice of Jesus say, "Go and search for this priceless treasure. Come and find me. You may not fully understand it right now, but I am alive." Or in the words of a great hymn, "The strife is over, the battle is won, the victory of life is won."
The strife is o'er, the battle done, the victory of life is won. The song of triumph has begun.